It is the Wisconsin Vegetable Garden Radio Show on 860 AM WNOV and W293 CX 106.5. Wherever you may be listening, however you may be listening, whether through those stations, the simple radio app, the TuneIn app, the radio tab on the WisconsinVegetableGardener.com website, social media, anywhere in between. I am your host, Joey Baird. Beside me is my wife, best friend, co-host, and gardening partner,
Holly Baird.
Information. And we're going to start with companion planting. Now, companion planting, Holly, let's define these, because I say every week when we talk about a subject, let's define this topic.
Okay, so companion planting is essentially the close planting of different plants that enhance each other's growth or protect each other from pests or other. They can also benefit, but then on the same note, they could possibly not benefit each other as well. So there's like companion planting and not companion planting.
Bad neighbors.
Right, bad neighbors.
But there is a side note here, something we want to make aware of when it comes to companion planting, that it's not really science-based here.
Right, so it does embrace some strategies such as biodiversity of agricultural ecosystems, basically meaning what's going on in your backyard or side yard or front yard, but it's not scientifically proven. However, throughout the years, people have said this has been effective for me when I plant this plant with this plant, and it works for me.
There is a little bit of chemistry that goes along with this, and we'll get to that in a moment. Now, what we are typically, and we'll get more into this in the Victory Garden talk in the second segment, what we're talking about companion planting is incorporating a plant and another plant and another plant, and all being different, all in the same area, the general area, the same bed. So with that being said, there are some, when you go and you look on your favorite search engine at companion planting charts, you can pull up 10 companion planting charts, and you can get about 8 different scenarios. It's not 4 plus 4 is always 8. There's a lot of variables with companion planting, and simply because there's not that university extension study, that science behind it. And we want to make you aware of that, because it's one of these things when we go to talks and somebody says, hey, I've been doing this particular method of planting or harvesting or growing for 38 years, and you're telling me to do something different. What should I do? Continue to do what you've always done, because it's been successful for you. For a new beginner, for a new gardener, this can be overwhelming, this information, because there's so much out there that we want you to be aware of it. But in the end, if it's been working for you or your grandmother or your aunt or your neighbor or whoever, continue those practices in which has been successful for you. But we'll go over some of these things and explain a little bit about what's good and what's bad, and some of the reasonings why, based on a number of reliable sources in which we were able to find.
And also keep in mind, you might look up companion planting for beans, and you might find 10 different things. And we found about 4 different things. Right, so you want to keep that in mind as well. The one thing you could do is you could always try it and see what happens for you. But then we also found things that seem to be common as well.
Go ahead.
Like, for example, one is legumes, which are things like beans and peas, and
it'd be clover, things that fix their own nitrogen in their roots.
And that's even peanuts are legumes as well. And it did state several times not to plant them with chives, garlic, leeks, onions, and all of those are members of the allium family. So not alien, allium. Yeah. And those are, it seems like that's because of a chemical reaction. So that did seem common.
Which makes sense, because you're in the fermenting world. You do a lot of fermentation, and if you ferment one jar next to another jar of a different type of item, the chemical reaction or the fragrance, or however you want to, the gases,
the gases
will interact and mess both jars up. So there's some science here, and based on your education, this makes legitimate sense by not planting. Now, when we talk about companion planting, what is the buffering zone? How far apart does these things need to be separated before you go, okay, well, I followed a chart and I kept peppers away from X plant this far, so I should be fine?
Basically, it needs to be about a foot or more, ideally about 2 feet. So if you have your bed separated out, you want to just keep something in between them.
You just don't want to have a pepper plant and a plant that doesn't go with peppers every alternating. You want it to have a
so like say you're doing onions and beans in the same bed or same area. So do you want to do beans and then plant like
Flowers.
some kale or flowers or
yeah.
something, and then plant your onions.
Yeah. So what other things here are do's and what are some don'ts here that we've seen kind of consistent among all of the charts that we have studied and looked at? Because, again, we looked at this and we were slightly confused. And if we are confused with the, I don't want to say we're experts, but we know what we're doing to a certain degree. If we were confused, then the general average weekend gardener would be just floored by all this information that nothing's consistent to a general sense.
So some of this stuff just seems ridiculous. Like this one says to put marjoram, which is an herb, in your beds and gardens to sweeten the taste of vegetable and herbs.
I wish I had a button because that's just not true.
No.
There's no way that you can plant one plant next to another plant to increase or decrease the flavor or the sweetness of that plant. That just simply is not true. There's no physiological science behind that. It just doesn't work.
Right, and you'll see this stuff just like anything you see on Pinterest or Facebook or whatnot, and that seems like really good, and if it seems like almost too good to be true, it probably is.
It's like some people...
You have to think about... You don't need a degree in science to think, okay...
Common sense.
It's just common sense, yeah. To think, okay, if I plant something next to my tomatoes, it's going to make them taste better.
Well,
that doesn't make any
that's the
sense.
other garden myth. I think the garden myth is you put... so much sugar in the hole at the time of planting a tomato to increase to make it sweeter or something off the wall.
You're just wasting your money.
Yeah, off the wall like that. There's another one, you put a little horseradish near your potatoes to increase the disease resistance. Now, that does make sense.
Yeah, but
here's the problem. Potatoes take about 90 to 135 days to grow based on the variety. Horseradish is a perennial. It will grow there for 10, 15 years. And you harvest the roots and that type of thing. So if you're planting it near a horseradish, you're essentially planting the potatoes in the same spot every single year, or you're taking chunks of horseradish and incorporating it through your edible garden. So you got horseradish everywhere, or you got potatoes growing in the same spot, and you got to rotate this stuff. So that's another thing that doesn't make sense to me.
Now this one says don't plant dill near carrots. I wouldn't plant dill in the ground at all.
Yeah.
We had a disastrous mess with that. So I definitely
3-4 years ago.
Yeah, we probably are still getting dill.
Yeah, we planted in containers in a place that 2 years following that would be a ground garden, and then a year or 2 years we ended up getting 1 gallon, 2 half-gallon mason jar full of clean dill seed, and I think we smothered it out to a certain point because I put so much mulch on the bed.
So if you're going to plant dill, I definitely would plant it in a container away from any ground you might want to grow in at some point.
And when it starts going to seed, catch it before it distributes the seeds, and because in some areas it's considered an invasive species, and we fully understand why. So some other don'ts here is...
Okay, and then this one says summer cornfields can be quickly converted into pumpkin fields. Pumpkins take like 110 days to grow. So if you're planting your pumpkin seeds after your corn is ready, you've missed the boat.
Yeah, we're not in Mississippi here.
Right.
We're doesn't work here. We've basically got about 140-ish days on a good year of frost-free temperatures.
I do like how it talks about how pumpkins do prevent or basically are a ground cover.
And that makes sense.
That does make sense.
It's part of the Three Sisters thing that the Native Americans utilized. Yes, that works good. Other things here, you don't want to plant peppers near squash or strawberries or tomatoes, which strawberries is a perennial, and that's kind of confusing too. But when we get to stuff like this, we want to make you aware that a lot of this is just hearsay, a bunch of old farmers sitting on the porch talking. There is, again, like we discussed, some legitimacy, some common sense that may...
And we're not trying to confuse you and say,
we're trying to deconfuse you because we were confused.
Right.
Yeah.
So you just want to think, when you find things like this, because companion planting does come up all the time, everywhere, and just take it with a grain of salt. Think, okay... does this make sense? Like the whole planting a plant next to the other plant to make it sweeter. That doesn't make sense.
And then we found a couple of them where it said sunflowers need to be planted at least 12 inches away from any other plant. Well, we incorporate sunflowers in amongst our tomato bed, and we've never we've never seen what we would say is something's not right here type of a view or observation. So some of these things when it comes to companion planting. Just continue to do the way that you've been taught, the way you've seen people do it. Now, again, you can do some, intermixing, herbs around your squash to deter some of the squash bugs. Those herbs emit that.
Now that does make sense.
That herb that emits that fragrance to confuse the bugs, so they don't attack your squashes. That makes sense. But for the general, don't plant this next to that. You kind of take it with a grain of salt. You review it, look at it. If it makes common sense to you, go ahead and do it. If it seems like, hey, this doesn't seem right, don't do it.
And if you check 4 different sources and they all do say the same thing, then go for it.
Yeah. If you're in the Milwaukee or surrounding areas, just tune your radio to 860 AM or FM 106.5. You can also find links on our Facebook pages, The Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener and Home Canning. Our website, thewisconsinvegetablegardener.com, click on the radio tab at the top of the page, then click on the Listen Live button, and you'll have immediately access to our live program. Mobile devices work very well also. Go to your app store and download for free the TuneIn app or the Simple Radio app. Then search WNOV 860, save it to your favorites, and you can have access to our radio show live wherever you're at in the world. Our radio program will also have podcast replay under the radio tab several days following the live broadcast. You can find all of these links in the show notes below. Our show airs 9 to 10 a.m. Central Standard Time every Saturday, March through the end of October. And we want to thank our sponsors, because without them, this would not be anywhere possible. You can find all of their links under the radio tab on our website at thewisconsinvegetablegardener.com.
For more information, please visit thewisconsinvegetablegardener.com.